Hey, Steven, how are you?
Hanging in
All right.
It's about 3:30, I guess, in the morning there.
there. Almost three.
Uh,
Okay, so thank you. Usually we're used to waking up at 2 and 3 o'clock to do these. So thank you for relieving our
Uh,
burden. Yeah,
that's all right, man.
thank you. So getting straight into it, UFC 212. Let me first, sorry, introduce Stephen to our Indian audience. He runs Cage Side Submissions, a podcast, one of the biggest podcasts in America. Please correct me if I'm wrong, and please tell me anything else you would like to say about yourself for the Indian audience.
Yeah, man. We've been doing this for like 3 years now. Me and Brad Storm been together for about a year and a half or so. We air the show every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time on Blog Talk Radio. It's available on iTunes, Stitcher. Um, you can. We're also getting the YouTube channel going, so we're also getting the interviews up there. So, I mean, yeah, appreciate the support wherever we can get it. So appreciate you taking the time to have me on tonight.
Great. It's lovely having you on, and great. And looking forward to this chat now. So, getting straight into UFC 212, about the Vitor Belfort Nate fight, what I personally would like to, of course, concentrate on is it was a close fight, you know? Uh,
Yeah.
and also, there was talk before about Vitor wanting to retire, but now him suddenly saying no. He does look forward to having his contract renewed, and he's of course talking about the Champions League, the league of sorry, what is that league?
the League of
Sorry,
The Pro Fighters League,
the
the
pro,
former
yeah,
the
Legends.
former
yeah,
World Series of Fighting.
yeah, yeah. So the league for legends, League of Legends, I think it's called, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean
now,
that's what we're hearing a lot of these fighters from like the early 2000s are starting to want to get this kind of an older league going on, and why not? I mean, you got guys like Chuck Liddell and such who seems like they want to get back into it. I won't be surprised if you see someone like Randy get back into it too. Some of these guys who feel disgruntled. We're about to see Mark Hunt fight, and obviously, everyone knows what's going on with him in the UFC. So,
yeah.
he might even be a name you might wind up seeing in there too. So,
And there
hopefully that's
was,
something they could do. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think there isn't room for them in the sport, but also at the same time, you have to, you hear some fans that are real clinical on the on social media about stuff like that. People talk crap on Bellator with some of the signings they make. So, everyone has their own brand of MMA, I guess I would say.
Now, what this is my viewpoint, of course, about Vitor wanting to renew his thing. It is for him also. I think he is very financially savvy. I think he's always been, and I think he does want to, get some more money. There's nothing wrong in it, but in doing that. But that's just my viewpoint. He feels he still can make some more money with a regular contract before going to, like trying to set up a league of a League of Legends, sorry, and so he wants to, extend that and make some more money while he can, rather than the talk of retirement. So, and I'm being trying to be very careful. So rather than more of just a passion to continue, it is somewhat what I sense also a financial thing of, because he does seem to have been very financially savvy throughout his career as well. Do you guys want to comment
I
on that?
mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like, obviously, he still wants to go in there, and yeah, definitely, you have to think like, outside of probably running a jiu-jitsu school or give it back, like, what is Vitor going to do when he's done? And with this, this potential promotion that he intends to come up with. I mean, why not, man? If you think you have something that you can offer outside of what it's already being done, go for it. If that's what you're passionate about and you have the connection to do it, do it. That's like the sit there and say you have a degree in journalism and not go after it just because your dad ran a tailor shop for 50 years or whatever. You know what I mean?
Akhilesh, you have a take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, Bellator MMA is probably a more lucrative option right now for Vitor Belfort. I mean, everyone that has had their fights run out on the contract, the UFC contract, is either looking at WSOF or either looking at Bellator MMA or Ryzen FF. Now, if you look at Ryzen itself, you have all these legends over there, including, Mirko Cro Cop, who retired from UFC, retired to just done with UFC once. You have the option of not facing those top 5, top 10 killers that the UFC has. He can go to Japan and make more money than you're making in the UFC. So I think that's probably an option for someone like Vitor Belfort at this point.
Now, one thing I just want to understand is the League of Legends. It'll be a separate promotion, which is what they're saying. So it doesn't necessarily, it won't be attached to any one promotion, but it'll be ex-fighters from any promotion, so to speak.
Yeah.
Correct?
So when Vitor kind of floated this idea, he wanted UFC to make it a different division rather than them being a different promotion.
Yeah.
But UFC obviously wasn't interested. It's kind of an interesting point for UFC because now they want to make themselves look like a legit sport, which they are. But with WME IMG, they kind of want to get into that entertainment aspect as well. So it's a fine line. It's a thin line that they're treading on. So, if they kind of open a division which, you associate with someone like Pride, a decade ago, where you have all these legends fighting each other, it was more of a circus than a sport technically. I think that's a big value addition for UFC, but at the same time, they have to kind of compromise on what they are. So it's a difficult proposition for them to open that as a different division, but I do see that probably happening as a different promotion.
Yeah. Now getting to the actual fight, what did both of you think of Vitor's performance in this?
I mean, I think it would have been a great fight for him to go out on it. He didn't get the signature knockout, but he had his moments where he had Nate up against the cage and he was peppering him with punches and got the unanimous decision. I mean, you couldn't have written a better storyline for him, but as you had already stated, he says he's got 5 more left in him. So, but as far as the performance goes, I mean, probably not the performance Vitor wanted, but I think for the Brazilian fans in attendance, they got pretty much everything they wanted but the knockout. I think that's the only thing that was missing.
Right, and we even talked about the matchup in the preview, saying it was going to be an even Stevens kind of thing because, one was a 20-year veteran, the other was an 18-year veteran. So, I thought after the third round, it was Nate Marquardt that was supposed to go 29-28 on the judges' scorecard, and so did a lot of people. So once Vitor's name was announced, you kind of understood why. It was pretty close. I'm not saying it was a runaway for Nate Marquardt as well, but yeah, it wasn't an a typical Vitor Belfort fight where he just puts pressure on his opponents in the very first round from the get-go. He was staying back. He was letting Nate Marquardt kind of dictate the pace of the fight. He was happy staying back. Then once they got into clinches or against the fence, you could see Vitor trying to maul him with pressure, trying to get in with his combinations. Not a typical Vitor Belfort aggressive fight that you would think. At the same time, as Steven said, it's not a bad fight to go out on, but not probably the kind of outcome that Vitor would have expected.
Yeah. Well, let's see what finally happens with his contract, negotiations with UFC. Now, he seems to feel he will get that extension. Now coming to the co-main event, Claudia versus Carolina. This was going to be like a cracker of a fight, and we as we spoke in the preview, Claudia is very strong, and the minute she got those double underhooks in and took her to the ground, she really controlled the fight. Did Carolina seem a little out of depth? Do you think we expected a little bit more, and did she seem a little uncomfortable to you guys?
I didn't really think she was uncomfortable. I just think she got overwhelmed in a position that let Claudia get her back, and unfortunately, got locked up with the submission there, and I also think it's not like Carolina was overwhelmed or overcome by Claudia's skills. You also have to remember Claudia's changed so much in her training. She's over there at Jackson's now. I mean, there's so many different aspects to it, and I actually love the fact that she kind of pushed away the idea of a third fight with Joanna as well. That she's just interested in whatever matchups they give her. If it's the title fight, it's a title fight. But I think we could expect some more growth. I want to see if. Being there in Albuquerque, working with Jackson Wink, if she can also improve that cardio, if she can put on, 25 minutes of a high pace, it'd be real interesting to see how that third fight will eventually play out with Joanna. But I don't think Carolina was overwhelmed or caught up in the moment of being down there in Brazil or anything like that. It just wasn't her night. And Claudia Gadelha has always been one of the top two strawweights in the world when we're talking about women's mixed martial arts.
Right, and we kind of talked about this in the preview as well. There were two big things that worked in Claudia's favor. One, it was a 3-round fight, not a 5-round fight. So you could expect Claudia to just go out, be the aggressor from the first second. And the second thing, we kind of even thought about how Carolina could negate Claudia's strength. Even if it comes to the clinches, as you said, once she gets those underhooks, you kind of know where Claudia is going to take you. She's going to take you to the ground, she's going to maul you, she's going to grapple with you. She won't let you breathe, put so much pressure on you, and that's exactly what she did. We wanted to see how Carolina would use her Muay Thai and kind of create that separation, maintain that range, and not let Claudia just overwhelm her with her just charging towards her. Carolina didn't do that. I mean, I was a little taken back with how calm Carolina was just to begin the fight. When we saw that both the fighters on the opposite side of the cage, you saw Carolina being very calm, very cautious. But once that fight got underway, it was all Claudia. We kind of thought that would happen, just because Claudia is more aggressive, just because Claudia is very, very strong when it comes to the clinches, when it comes to taking someone to the ground and just wrestle with them. It was that fight didn't actually make Claudia look a level above Carolina. That's not the case. We know Carolina is a really good striker. We know Carolina did very well against Joanna in maintaining that distance. This time around, she couldn't do that, and Claudia just mauled her with pressure. So yeah, I mean, after the fight, you could kind of see Claudia probably facing someone like Rose Namajunas next, not Joanna Jędrzejczyk, because she has fought her twice and lost twice. I would be interested in seeing a matchup between Claudia and Rose, just because they are probably the two top grapplers in the division.
I actually would be in favor of Jessica Andrade, just because of the style and skill set they both possess. I think it would be a little bit of a better one. I actually think that Rose is probably going to be the next one in line, even though I think a lot of people feel that she probably needs about a fight or two before she fights you on, despite where her ranking is. It's just it's all about experience when it comes to this game and fight IQ. I believe it's Rose has a skill set and drive that could possibly be a champion, but I guess the real question is if she can put it all together. But like I said, maybe she might fight for the title next, so we don't know. But at least in my opinion, I'd like to see Jessica Andrade and Claudia Gadelha next. That's just me.
Okay, so moving on to the main event, Jose Aldo and Max Holloway. It was everything, according to me, that we thought it would be. With Max Holloway, the first round, of course, Jose coming out strong, but Max Holloway then finding his feet and keeping the distance. He almost finished Jose a couple of times. I think, what was it, the third round that he almost finished him first?
I think the third round is what the one he did finish him in.
He did finish him, okay.
Yeah, he got it like late in the third. But I mean, a lot of people kind of felt that Jose won the first 2 rounds. I could definitely say Jose won the first round, but it wasn't these super definitive rounds. Like, yeah, he'd rocked and had Max hurt, but Max one of these guys that's like you have him rock, but that's usually where it's like the old Chris Lieben thing where he became more dangerous and you know. And stuff like that. It's not kind of the exact same thing, but I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, Max Holloway's rocked isn't like a surprising moment in a fight, but he's one of these fighters, man, that if you have him rocked and you don't put him away, he just gets better as the fight goes along. You know, the longer that fight goes on, the more dangerous it becomes. And I was when I was, you know, thinking about who was winning this fight, you know, Max had always been my pick, and it's not, you know, anything against Jose Aldo. It's just where I think Max Holloway is now in his career compared to where Jose Aldo is right now. And I think it might, you know, there's some challenges out there for Max, but you know, Jose, you know, interested to see where he goes from here. Obviously, you know, moving forward, it's probably going to be Frankie Edgar or
Cub Swanson.
Or possibly Cub Swanson, but you know, it's just an interesting time to see some more blood and life breathe into that featherweight division. You know, as we're going there, you have Rogan talking about you know, Aldo's legacy's tarnished by 13 seconds against Conor McGregor, which is the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard in my entire life. I love Joe Rogan to death, but he's coming more and more like the UFC propaganda's mouthpiece. It's becoming bad, but I still got love for Joe. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, you know, yeah, you know, Jose's you know, lost two big title fights in the last few years here. He's kind of got to. He's got to find a way to reinvent himself. You know, I think he did himself a real disservice not throwing any real leg kicks to kind of slow Max down. Max, one of these guys, I don't think it really made that much of a difference because he likes to switch back and forth with stances as he's punching, almost like you know, anyone who's seen Southpaw, kind of like, you know, when he's going through a combination, he'll just switch his stance to kind of get that lead hand in front so he can do things. So Max is one of those guys who's real versatile, and it's one of the reasons why I thought he'd win that fight. You know, I didn't. One of the things I'm really interested in seeing is who's next. I mean, that's where you go from here. You know, Jose Aldo, I really hope that you know, maybe he changes some things up training and stuff like that. It's always kind of felt like when you gotten him at least 10, 15 minutes in, he becomes a different fighter for whatever reason that is. You know, he's gotten some late finishes in his career, but, you know, it's just, I don't know if it's a cardio thing or what, but, you know, we've seen a lot of these fighters when they leave Brazil and where they've been all their training career, you see them become different fighters. So maybe it's something Jose wants to do, try to reinvent himself. Max Holloway, unless somebody can put pressure on him to the point where you're able to hurt him and get him in a position to put him away, you're going to have a hard time getting that featherweight title from him. And I got much love from Frankie Edgar. You know, I'm right here in Philadelphia. We're not too far from Toms River. And, you know, this is definitely Frankie Edgar country when we're talking to the fans around here. So it's going to be interesting to see how that matchup plays. You're also going to start seeing fans asking for that Conor McGregor rematch. If you remember, both of those guys either went into or came out of the fight with knee injuries. It'll be interesting to see what happens, you know, what Conor decides to do with his career moving forward. If he ever does decide to come back to featherweight, you know, I'll still always hold Jose Aldo is still in my mind, the 145-pound king. There's no arguments right now. Conor McGregor never defended that title, so he doesn't get to have the featherweight goat, at least in my opinion. Go ahead, guys.
Akish?
Right. So as Steven said, you know, one of the things that caught my eye was Jose Aldo just not using his leg kicks to keep Max Holloway away. You know, if you watch again the Jose Aldo Frankie Edgar fight the last time around, one of the biggest weapons that Jose Aldo has is his jab. You know, if you have someone like Frankie and Max Holloway who are volume punchers, what Jose normally does is use his jab to kind of throw them off their rhythm, not let them settle down. But he did not do that. You know, in the first round, we saw Jose rocking Max Holloway, try to finish him, but Max, as Steven said, you know, kind of thrives on that kind of a setup. So the biggest, you know, thing that I kind of saw in Jose Aldo was he just did not throw leg kicks. He was not using his jabs properly. The first two rounds, the first round, you know, everyone almost thought it went to Jose Aldo. The second round was more close. So you knew, you know, Max Holloway was kind of getting back in the fight. We saw before that Jose Aldo, whenever it's a more than 3-round fight, Jose kind of picks his pace up once it crosses the 3 rounds and goes into the championship rounds. So Noah Oneo kind of thrives in that respect. But in this fight, you saw Max getting just better and better as the second round completed. And the third round, you just saw Max Holloway dominating Jose Aldo. And the other thing is, he did not have his hands up when he was boxing with Max Holloway. Well, you know, in 145-pound division, Max is probably the best striker, the most evolved striker, I would say, in the past couple of years. So there were a couple of things that were very interesting that you did not know why Jose did. You know, Jose Aldo for the past 10 years or the past 13 years has been the most dominant 145-pound fighter. And he kind of, you know, he has evolved so much. He mixes up his game so well with those combinations. You know, his hands, his legs, and when he has the opening, has the opportunity, takes his opponents to the ground and uses you know, his grappling effectively. So you kind of know that Jose was supposed to do what Jose usually does. This time he did not do that. So there were a couple of things you do not know why Jose did not do the way he should have. But again, you know, I have no complaints. Max Holloway kind of blew Jose Aldo out of the waters in the third round. Once he kind of, you know, landed that straight and Jose hit the mat, you knew Max was gonna, you know, swarm in. He's gonna apply more pressure. He was just gonna barrage with punches, and that's exactly what he did. And a lot of people even thought it was an early stoppage. Even Jose Aldo said it was an early stoppage. By no means it was an early stoppage. You know, you have the referee, you know, Big John asking Jose if he was okay, if he was intelligently defending. He gave Jose the time because Max was on his back and he was just raining down with punches, and Big John gave him enough time to recuperate, enough time to defend himself intelligently, and he was not doing that. So it was by no means an early stoppage. So, you know, it's props to Max Holloway. I thought Jose Aldo might have this one just because of who Jose Aldo is, but props to Max Holloway. He clearly showed that, you know, he's ready for being the champion. As to what happens next, I see Cub Swanson probably facing Max. You know, when it comes to Conor McGregor, you know, we talked to Max before that. He said, I'm not going to call out Conor McGregor. It doesn't make sense. Why would Conor McGregor, you know, come down and fight me? He has his own thing going on. I'll have my own thing going on. So props to Max Holloway. Next, I see Cub Swanson kind of jumping the line. After he beat Artem Lobov, he's going to probably face Max for the title.
But don't you think Frankie Edgar would make more sense, especially because he doesn't have, Cub Swanson still has a little time, you know, and like you said, he beat Artem Lobov, who's not exactly the name to beat for a title contention fight, you know, whereas Frankie did beat the young guy on the rise, Yair Rodriguez, you know, who was, you know, expected to do a lot of things. And you know, of course, Frankie could never get past Jose, but this would be a new matchup for him, you know, and for everybody to see. And like we said, you know, Cub Swanson still has some time. You know, he can still fight somebody else and, you know, then fight for the title. But Frankie's already beaten everybody except, of course, Jose. And I don't see that fight happening again. So for Frankie, the logical thing would be, you know, to match him up with Max Holloway. And then after that, see, you know, where Cub Swanson fits in.
Right. So
yeah, my thing. Go ahead.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So you know, after the fight, someone tweeted this. Someone said the biggest two winners of the event were the two fighters that did not fight. Yeah. You know, Frankie Edgar and Rose Namajunas. And to an extent, that's true. You know, but you know, Frankie just fought Jose Aldo before Yair Rodriguez. And we kind of talked about the fight with Yair Rodriguez. I said Yair is not ready. He's not at the level of Frankie Edgar.
Yeah, but what I mean is he did fight Jose Aldo, but that's what I mean. Max is a different fighter. it puts in a whole different equation. He wasn't able to get past Jose, because of whatever reason. But the Max presents a different thing for the audience as well. How will Frankie match up against Max Holloway? It's a different, wholly different fight.
It's a different fight, but also if you think about it, he's fought in guys with that type style. Go back to his what was the Charles Oliveira fight? Charles Oliveira has a kind of stand-up style that is similar to Max's. While obviously different men, different fighter, different different fight IQ, all that, but it's something that you'd be interested to see. And also you got to think he's had 2 fights since the loss to Aldo, so it's not like it's completely out of the question to say that Frankie should be next. Would Cub Swanson make interesting? Because it would be the first time Cub's fighting for the UFC title. Last time I believe he had a title fight was WEC days. It's been quite some time. But not to say that he isn't on the rise up. I think I have to. If you're painting me in a corner who I'm thinking is getting it, I would probably say it would be Frankie with the big win over Yair with the compiled with the win over Jeremy Stephens. And you got to remember that before the loss to Aldo, he was on a pretty significant tear as well, with a win over Cub Swanson too. Remember that.
Right. Now, while saying that, the reason why I pick Cub Swanson is because just imagine the stylistic matchup between Max Holloway and Cub Swanson. That would be a stand-up war that every fan would want to see. So,
But you've already seen that fight. That's what I mean. You've already seen that fight, but you haven't seen Frankie Edgar and Max Holloway.
But both men have evolved so much since that fight that it poses a unique dynamic between the two.
What I mean is, his last fight was Artem Lobov. And full respect to him, he really, fought well. Everybody, gave that to him. But is that the step to a title fight? That's what I'm saying.
When you look at it, his last 4 wins, I think the more impressive one was the Choi fight, which he had his moments where he was also in danger. And Hakron Diaz, not the greatest list of names, but he's on a 4-fight winning streak, and while we could sit there and say why it doesn't make sense, why I would also get why it would at the same time. So we got to see how it plays out. He's got the submission loss to Max Holloway. As you stated, they're both different guys. That they've both come a long way, but it's really up to the UFC. Like we could sit here and make arguments for both guys, but at the same time, they could throw us a zinger, and next thing Dustin Poirier's fighting for the title for whatever reason.
Right, and the other thing that the UFC might
stranger things have happened, so that's a good point.
Yeah, and the other thing that the UFC officials and the fans might look at is Frankie just got a title shot 2 fights ago, while someone like Cub Swanson hasn't had a title fight in the UFC yet. So there are a couple of things that might play into it. Just the stylistic matchup between Max Holloway and Cub Swanson, the fact that Frankie Edgar just fought for the title. Yeah, I mean, as you said, it's essentially down to Sean Shelby how he looks at the entire matchup and who's gonna put in a fight. But yeah, Max Holloway Cub Swanson fight is intriguing.
Yeah. Anyway, but a great fight by Max Holloway. I think he really deserved it, especially after his win streak. And I think we all put our opinions about who he should fight next. It's of course up to the UFC, like we said. Now moving on to this weekend, UFC Auckland. We have, of course, we'll talk about the 2 top fights. First, of course, Derek Brunson versus Daniel Kelly. Derek Brunson, of course, coming off of 2 losses. Daniel Kelly coming off of that really good win over, and I think he's got a 4 or 5 fight wins, maybe more. Daniel Kelly.
4.
After that win over Rashad Evans, and Derek Brunson, a little disappointing, of course, in his last 2 fights. Robert Whittaker, of course, stopped that win streak of his in really good fashion. Anderson Silva fight. he needs to make, of course, a comeback. And Daniel Kelly is the guy on the rise, though not really the new kid on the block because he's been around for some time. So this will be an interesting fight because I think both guys really want the win. Daniel Kelly, of course, to keep moving on, and Derek Brunson to stop the losing streak.
Derek Brunson is in for a handful. You got to remember, Dan Kelly is an Olympic level judoka, 4th degree black belt. He also holds a black belt in jiu-jitsu on top of it. But he's not the most athletic guys in the world. Where Derek Brunson, Division 2A, wrestler there, does have a purple belt in jiu-jitsu under David Branch. So I mean, he trains out there in Albuquerque. He has some of the best guys in the world in the room with him. As you mentioned, on a 2-fight losing streak, but he was on a 5-6 fight winning streak with wins over Uriah Hall, Sam Alvey, Lorenz Larkin, who's going to be fighting for the Bellator welterweight title here in a few weeks or so. So the last guy to beat him before that was Yoel Romero. So he needs to get back to his winning ways, but Daniel Kelly is going to be a tough task, man. He's not he's not the most graceful guy. I mean, if I remember in the Rashad Evans fight, he had both his knees taped up. The guy just finds a way to make it work, man. He's only been beat once, and that was by Sam Alvey with that punching power, early in that fight. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Brunson land a big punch, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dan Kelly turns him into a pretzel either. So really intriguing matchup. The question is, I guess, will Brunson's speed and athleticism and punching power get him back in the winning column, or will Daniel Kelly's grappling and savviness mark him another win? Which, if he gets it, I think they'll be like 14-1 or something like that. So really interesting to see how this plays out. And obviously, he's going to be with his in Australia with the hometown crowd there. So I'm sure he's going to have a lot of people pulling for him.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if I remember correctly, Dan Kelly had surgeries on both his knees. So, that kind of thing. And, Derek Brunson is quickly becoming that fighter in the league of Owen St. Preux and Uriah Hall, where they exhibited so much potential, but at the same time just throw it away. You know what I mean? So Derek Brunson in his previous 2 fights, talking about previous 2 fights itself against Whittaker and Anderson Silva. I remember in the Whittaker fight, Brunson was just pushing his, being the aggressor, just pushing forward without even covering himself. There was zero defense. It was just all offense, and Whittaker caught him. And against Anderson Silva, a lot of people thought it was Derek Brunson that won the fight and not Anderson Silva. So both of those fights, you kind of can say coulda, shoulda, woulda in Brunson's favor. But this fight itself, Brunson has zero freedom where he can make a mistake, against someone like Dan Kelly. 39 years old, excellent judo practitioner, excellent jiu-jitsu. Against Rashad Evans, one thing that surprised me was Kelly's ability to outbox Rashad Evans. Kelly was not really known for the way he put his combinations in, which was impressive against the former champion. So, it's not an easy fight in any sense for Derek Brunson. He's going to have his hands full. But at the same time, the stylistic matchup is very intriguing because at one point you have the NCAA Division II wrestler in Brunson, who's just powerful, who's a powerhouse. We have seen with Uriah Hall, for example, where he just overpowered him and dropped him. And on the other hand, you have someone like Dan Kelly, who's a veteran, has one of the best judo and jiu-jitsu combinations in the division today. As Steven said, has the ability to kind of, turn Brunson into a pretzel. So the stylistic matchup itself is very intriguing. You have someone that can stop Dan Kelly with one big punch, but at the same time, you have someone with wily veteran like Dan Kelly who can just take Brunson to the ground and use his jiu-jitsu to gain the advantage. But still, if Brunson loses his fight, I think that's probably it for Brunson in the UFC. Someone that has displayed so much potential. His last 2 fights, he should have won. Just threw the fight away, showed too much respect for Anderson Silva. Against Whitaker, just showed zero defense. Zero defensive guard, just got caught and was dropped. So this kind of leaves him with, against, I shouldn't say this, but his back is against the wall. He needs to win this fight. There's no other way for him.
And I don't see Kelly going down, in one, at least in the one punch, Brunson usual, because I think he knows how to maintain the distance really well. We saw that, with Rashad Evans, and he's got a really interesting, and like Steve pointed out, he's an Olympian in judo. I think he has a really interesting, it's almost a little irritating for the other fighter, because he has to always be reaching out to him. So it's frustrating for the other guy, and I think that is what works in his favor as well. So I don't really see him going down, but of course it remains to be seen. Now, moving on to the main event, Derek Lewis and Mark Hunt, two very different fighters. Of course, Derek Lewis coming out with all those comments in his last win over Travis Brown, which really, blew up the internet and brought so much color to his personality, So, all of those things he said about Ronda and, having to poo-poo, and, it was funny. And I think people like that. So, on the one hand, you have Derek Lewis, who people, I think, are really, because of his last, comments, going to be rooting for. On the other hand, you have Mark Hunt. People love the anti-establishment guy as well. He's fighting for his rights, which a lot of people might, agree with. That all he's saying is, if somebody is taking something, which is illegal, they shouldn't be able to profit from it. And in theory, it's not a wrong idea, It's not a wrong idea that somebody else should not be able to make money if they are caught doing something illegal. So he, of course, is facing an uphill battle, and he just lost to Overeem, the NC, against Brock Lesnar. Before that, of course, he had the walk-away knockout over Frank Mir. So this is a really interesting, I think, fight for both of these guys, who are both one-punch knockout artists, and so how do you guys see this going? And can we predict it, or do we just sit back and watch?
I think we just sit back and watch the beautiful destruction that'll happen when these two mammoth of men get in this cage, man. I mean, Derek Lewis, showed us in the Roy Nelson fight that he's not just a guy that can throw bombs, he can actually fight, and if put on his back, he can get his way back to his feet. And a lot of people felt if Roy Nelson got it to the ground, that'd have been it for him, because I think legitimately at the time he was still a white belt in jiu-jitsu. Roy Nelson should have wiped the mat with him, but it didn't happen that way. Derek was able to get back to his feet and punish Roy for the better part of 15 minutes. I think that was a real turning point. It's kind of what put Derek in, I think he's ranked, just outside the top 5 right now in the heavyweight division. He's got the win against Gonzaga. Obviously, as you mentioned, the Travis Brown fight, which I think is even funnier. If I remember correctly, he has a girlfriend. He was doing all that talking about Ronda. Yeah. But I mean, it's you got to have the character in there, man. And I think Derek brings a lot of stuff into the cage that outside of just being a guy who likes to drop hurt bombs on people. So we got to see how it plays out. Mark Hunt isn't a guy easily turned away. I mean, granted, I think we're talking about what was it, 2-3 years ago was the first time he was ever knocked out. So we gotta see how that goes. He's had mixed with win loss, fights overturned because of medical suspensions and positive drug test. He's still upset about He's beefing with the UFC contract again. People tend to forget that why it was so long we seen him in the UFC in the first place is because there was a contract dispute. It was like a whole 2 years from the time that we bought Pride until we seen him in the UFC. So this is no strange ground for him. This is kind of almost like a common thing here. But we're going to concentrate on this fight. Again, he's another one of the guys. He's gonna have his home crown behind him, but I'm sure Derek Lewis is gonna do everything in his power to put him away. I don't want to pick anyone in this fight, but if you're telling me I gotta pick one of them, I gotta go with what's going on with Derek Lewis right now. I know Mark Hunt's a prideful guy. He's gonna be real hard to put away, but I just like what. The upward swing that Derek is having in his career. Not to say that Mark couldn't stop him dead in his tracks. It's just I think the way everything's playing out, it's in favor of where Derek Lewis is.
Akhilesh?
Yeah. So sorry.
I said you have something to add to that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sure
so it's a very interesting matchup because. As Steven said, you have one guy who is climbing the rankings while you have the other guy that was, the perennial top 5 guy that's just slipping out. In the past 2 fights, we've kind of seen the slide of Mark Hunt because his loss against Brock Lesnar wasn't something where you saw Hunt throwing anything back. It was just one-side destruction by Brock Lesnar, mainly, when he used his wrestling. But against Overeem, Overeem kind of used his short jabs to perfection, and once he got inside the clinches, it was Overeem. You thought Overeem would have the glass chin, but in that fight, you kind of saw Mark Hunt having that. So I kind of think that Mark Hunt is on a downhill slope. He's getting into the fag end of his career. But you have Derek Lewis, who has shown tremendous striking abilities, tremendous wrestling as well. Once he takes his opponents to the ground, he exerts so much pressure on them and works on them that as a heavyweight, it's difficult for his opponents to kind of get out of that predicament as well. It's difficult to predict who's going to win, but again, I have to go with my gut instinct, and I say it's going to be Derek Lewis.
Now, tell me one thing. Do you feel when Mark Hunt enters the cage nowadays, he also carries the burden or the weight of the case which is going on against the UFC? Because, it's like, how do you really work? I mean, he is making a good deal of money still. I think, how much did he make the last fight? Was it like 500,000? Sorry? 750 or 700,000. That's still a lot of money. Of course, that's still a lot of motivation to be fighting for, but at the end of the day, you're still working, fighting for the promotion that you have this case against. And I'm just wondering, does that weigh on Mark Hunt when he enters the cage, or does it motivate him to show, to do better? I don't know, but is it a factor? What do you guys think?
I don't think it is. I mean, you could say, well, he lost his last fight, and I believe that's right around the time where everything was becoming official with the suit against the UFC and whatever. But I think he's one of these guys that he has that strong mental mindset where outside of a death in the family, I don't think anything would would knock him off a track and it be a distraction and affect him. These guys both have a tremendous amount of respect for each other. I believe once that cage door closed, whatever's going on outside of it will mean absolutely nothing to Mark Hunt. He's just going to have, kill going through his head right at that point in time.
Great.
Yeah, and we have seen in the past, you take the fight against someone like Bigfoot and Mark Hunt. You put the odds against Mark Hunt, and he's the kind of guy who kind of rises above the obstacles and kind of embraces the challenge. So I don't think it's gonna be a big part in what's gonna happen. Yes, we've seen before what Mark Hunt can do, and when he's at his devastating best, he's probably the most dangerous fighter in the heavyweight division. So we can expect a very good fight, a very explosive fight between the two. I don't think it's gonna matter much though, the case against UFC.
Okay. Well, having said that, this is a fight that I'm really looking forward to seeing, and I think we all are. Like you said, we need to just sit back and enjoy and watch it. Thank you so much, Steven, for joining us.
Not a problem, guys. Anytime.
It was a real pleasure having you. And Steven from Cage Side Submissions. Do follow their podcast, and they're coming up with the YouTube channel now. We will share the link whenever you come up with it for you guys. We would love to have you over again. It was a real pleasure. Thank you so much, Steven, Akhilesh. This is the MMA India show. Thank you so much, and we will be back with you soon.